Welcome to the show.
Next topic.
Ooh.
It's a bit of a serious one.
Yeah, this one's a downer. So people always tell me,
I'm not laughing.
people always try and explain to me like why they like sad movies, and they're like, oh, sometimes you just like to cry. I've never felt that way about movies. Like, I've never thought I want to watch a movie because I want to cry. If you're one of those people though, and you just like to cry, read up BBC News, their most recent article on Yemen, because it is horrible. Like, actually horrible. This week, a UN person in charge of aid to Yemen, who's trying to like save a sinking ship, by the sounds of it, basically came out and just accused the rest of the world of completely ignoring it. He's got a pretty valid case to make. There's 28 million people in Yemen, their population. They half of them are food insecure, so like they don't have a necessarily steady supply of food. 7 million of them don't know where their next meal is going to be. 3 million are actively starving at this moment. And the BBC News article will get you because it's basically all these, like, the reporter went into Yemen and went into like actual villages and was talking to families about like, they had to like choose which of their kids would live.
Wow.
Like heaps of them.
Jeez.
Like heaps of them had to do that because they'd be like, we can spend the money to transport him to the hospital and get hospital care and food, but then that would mean not feeding our other kids. So they basically, like, pictures of these 2-year-old children with like bones. They're just bones at this point. And like,
And no one knows about it because
yeah, it's not on the news. It's not on the news at all. Like, I was in the news a little bit earlier in the year, sort of when the Saudi Arabians first started their like campaign. So what's happening is there was a guy in charge of Yemen, a dictator. He was in charge for a really long time. Just like a lot of Arab countries, during 2011 there was an uprising. Different president got in charge. But a rebellion started against that president who came to power. I think it's part of the Shiite-Sunni struggle. So I'm assuming the original dictator was Shiite. He's replaced by a Sunni who was backed by the Saudis. The Iranians tend to back the Shiites, and there was a Shiite rebellion. They overthrew the government, but then the Saudis sort of started attacking. So the Saudi Arabians and a bunch of other Arab countries have formed a coalition that is like bombing the Houthi rebels.
In Yemen.
Yeah, in Yemen. So this is the thing. There's evidence that the Saudi Arabians are actively targeting hospitals, civilians. They're targeting farms. So if they blow up the farms and the civilians starve and there's no like support for the Houthi rebels, who are currently the ones governing most of the country, which is crazy because it's very similar to the stuff that they're accusing the Russians of doing. Whereas the Russians are actually are bombing people like Al-Nusra Front, who are a terrorist organization and stuff. They're obviously doing it pretty indiscriminately because heaps of civilians are dying. Saudi Arabians are using cluster munitions, which are actually against the Geneva Convention, actively targeting farming and infrastructure required for civilians to survive, which is against the Geneva Convention. It's actually worse than what the Russians are doing, but you don't hear about it in the news and you don't hear any condemnation. There's actually US and British advisors helping the Saudi Arabian coalition. And all of the Saudi Arabian coalition's munitions and planes were sold to them by Western governments.
So this guy definitely has a point.
So
Yeah.
this sounds a lot like Syria. Has it got anything to do with Syria?
No, it's part of a massive, much wider conflict, which is basically centered on Shiite versus Sunni, Iran as a superpower versus Saudi Arabia as a superpower. And there's a lot of fighting based on that. Syria and Yemen are an extension of that. But it's just amazing how much we're like, oh, there's damn Russians bombing Aleppo. And it's like...
Which is bad.
Which is 100% bad. But then you don't get any news coverage where US and British advisors are actively helping a government which is dropping cluster bombs on people and actively stopping humanitarian aid. The other thing that came out was that of like all the money pledged last year from governments to support like humanitarian projects around the world, they've gotten about 50%. They've actually done the biggest drive they've ever done, I think the UN, to get money because at the moment there's as many internally displaced people as at the end of World War II. So this is the worst the world has ever been since World War II.
Wow.
So you've got Mosul, where thousands of people are living every day, and there's a massive attack. So it's a massive city being attacked, sort of final stages of war. Aleppo is the same situation, and Yemen, and a bunch of other places all over the whole region that are just a complete mess. So this is like the worst it's ever been. And also, like, I guess governments are least equipped at the moment to actually provide money, because heaps of governments are in debt and their own populations aren't really happy with them, so they probably don't want to give foreign aid. So this is like a confluence of like the worst situations to ever like deal with this stuff. So I feel like we're about to see some like pretty horrible stuff, or we won't see it. It won't be on the news and we won't know.
Yeah. So why Yemen? Is it because it's Saudi Arabia that's doing it that we don't hear about it? Is it because we need them for oil?
Well, they don't get condemnation. Hypocritically, the US and British and other Western powers don't condemn them because they support them. Saudi Arabia is their ally in the Middle East, so that's their way of projecting power, is to have an ally who does what they want. Doesn't seem like they do, and they actively seem to be helping them hurt civilians in Yemen. It's the same thing that Russia is doing in Syria. It's hard to say, because we like seeing things through a lens of like, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. Putin's a bad guy, right? So we'll have him in the news doing bad things. But when the guys we want to be the good guys are doing bad things, we don't have them on the news because it's confusing. Yeah. Or it doesn't fit into whatever narrative they're like trying to push on us.
But not even the news, like anywhere. Because the news is its own thing. It has that, but then Facebook, I don't know, any awareness at all.
Yeah. Well, I got this from the news. To be fair, there are some good news organisations. So Al Jazeera covers it well. BBC News covers it well. I think most of the American networks, not so much. It's probably more like attention. We get so much news, and if it's not the top...
Yeah, true.
This story was out there the day that Donald Trump tweeted that they should cancel the order for Air Force One, and that was the top story, and this one was like third. And I was like, that is objectively ridiculous. He tweeted. He didn't even do it. It's not that he actually cancelled. He said he was going to. And he probably won't, because they need another plane for him.
Yeah, the only other thing, when you said Yemen, I thought salmon fishing in the Yemen, that movie. That was the only other thing I knew about Yemen.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what is he talking about? And I hit the article, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you didn't even read it, eh?
Yeah.
It's like the first thing you see on that article, but I encourage people should read it. And there are organizations you can support, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders.
Yes.
Because there's like hospitals closing all the time, like infrastructure is collapsing. But they're like trying without enough resources to like stop it.
What do you think's going to happen? Do you think that country group is just going to end up empty or something? Like, everyone's just going to leave, right?
No, you'll just see lots of people die.
People don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm. Right. No one wants to leave, but like, if your hospitals are getting bombed, like, that's a pretty big incentive to leave the country.
There's not really anywhere to go.
I don't think they would. Yeah, exactly. What do they mean? If they can't even afford basic things like food, how would they transport? Or they would have to walk, and I don't think they were in any physical condition to walk.
Yeah,
that
a lot
distance,
of the problem,
so they would die.
The hospitals are hours away. Like they can't even get to them.
Yeah.
Even if they do have someone, so like heaps of people are just dying of preventable diseases. They don't have medicine. They don't have clean drinking water either. So there was like an outbreak of cholera.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're getting like all the
horrible
things.
Just back to what Chris was saying is how is it tied to like the whole oil agreements with Saudi Arabia, and that's why places like America or influential Western governments like America, Australia, etc. wouldn't actively be involved in resolving that, or what?
Yeah, I think the oil gives them a lot of power, but they also want influence to control what happens in the whole region because it could go against them.
Yep.
I didn't know that Saudi Arabia were our allies.
Yep.
Yeah. They fly F-16s.
Said
Their Air Force is equipped by the US government.
in my head, they're bad guys.
And the British. Yeah. That is the irony, because the very same things that they'll condemn other governments for doing, Saudi Arabia does it worse than everyone else.
Yeah,
they've beheaded more people than ISIS this year.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a real good and bad guy in that whole area. Everyone seems to have bad aspects.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It is a
and the
bit hard.
civilians are the ones who end up just dying.
Yeah. So how do you, like, for me, when I hear a story like this, and I feel like we live in this wonderful land of abundance, and yet these people either don't say anything or get involved in certain activities around the world because they're protecting us as their people, so as Australians or whatever we are.
That's
Do
true.
you know what I mean? Do you feel like, oh yes, our government has that, they have to protect us, or how do you challenge that? Like,
It's a whole other level.
it's so big.
Well, I feel like I don't want to be protected by something that stands for that, something that can abide in such terrible things.
Mhm.
Like,
And it seems like we're having good. It seems like the one thing we can do in this country is, and what seems to be happening is, we need to be better with refugees.
I think more effective would be actually upping our aid. So we
Mm.
reduced it by several $billions. The UN's asking for $22 billion next year. If all governments actually stepped up their aid, they might even be able to help the people in the country they're actually in, and then they won't need to leave.
Yes, I like that idea.
So it's kind of stupid to reduce your aid at the same time as trying to stop refugees,
Right.
because you're gonna get more refugees
Yeah.
if you reduce your aid.
Yes.
But it seems like it's more of a war kind of thing. that everyone's trying to tiptoe around war.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There was a big conference on foreign policy in the Middle East. So it was the Arab US conference on Middle Eastern policy or something like that. And it's attended by all these Saudi princes and all these big shots, right? It's funded by oil companies, so Exxon, Chevron, all of them. It's also funded by Lockheed Martin, British Aerospace.
oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
munitions and oil companies.
Yeah.
Because with what you're saying, Jules, our governments are only supporting them so that they can keep us safe. Basically what that's saying is us and our lifestyle is so much more important than these people being alive.
Indirectly, that is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
That's what they're saying.
it's hard, but if you look at things like previous topics with Donald Trump and him saying, I'm going to make America great, it's actually to protect the American people and the American way of life, which in one essence is good, but in order to achieve that, it means several other people.
the rest
Yeah,
of you.
exactly. So where do we fit in the big picture?
that's a big question. And
Yeah.
and we're kind of over time already.
To finish off.
Okay, we went a little bit over time, but that was super interesting, so I
It
couldn't
is
stop it.
interesting.
That's good. This has been episode 22. I'm Ali,
I'm Jules.
Chris?
Jono.
and thank you for watching. This has been a very serious week, but we hope you found it informative.
Sorry.
Goodbye.
Namaste.